Floor models. Tante Annette was a model at Peck's, where there's an LL Bean now. Annette was so tall, Grandmama used to say. Ooh la la, my mother said. Tante Annette was my role model, said my mother, who went on to become the floor model at Lord & Taylor circa 1976. She walked the main floor greeting people and looking tall in Charles Jourdan's shoes. Your mother was a floor model at Peck's, Grandmama said to me another time. Lord & Taylor, I said. She was so tall and pretty, jolie, mon Dieu, Grandmama said, crying, with tears popping from her eyes, and she drank straight from her bottle. Why was Grandmama crying? Why did she ever cry? Life, joy, remorse. Her second baby died of a disease, congenital or environmental, perhaps. It's my mother who worked in New York, I said, and she looked at me and said, you're so pretty. The bottle was Grandmama's pollution. Peck's was near the mouth of the Androscoggin, just inland from where the Bates Mill gave off its effluent to the river. The Androscoggin during the mill days was the most polluted waterway in America. On the town side of the factory, girls called out the window to the boys from Bates College, my father's alma mater. Alouette, gentille alouette, oh, pretty goose. After 1917, every mayor in Lewiston was French. Grand-Grandmama Leah came by Grand Trunk Rail in 1895, a middle child among 9. Féline, her sister, worked at the mills. No one else in the family worked in the mills, said Grandmama, only they did. The family talks instead about the cousin who also became mayor, and how Leah made magnificent hats for Anglos and was tailor to the wealthy of Auburn across the frothy Androscoggin. She rode in a carriage with her hair piled high, wearing tailored dresses. They talk about Grand-Grandpapa Philippe, who died early of meningitis or some other toxin, possibly alcohol. My mother talks about how she used to be the floor model at Peck's. No, that was Tante Annette, I remind her. You were the floor model at Lord & Taylor. Oh, Annette! I loved Annette. She was so elegant. Who did you say? Annette. Oh. My mother peers off. Who's Annette? She looks round. We're at a family reunion hosted by Cousin Roger with the Gallic chin and Vichy mustache. Tante Terry is here, and my mother's childhood best friend, cousine, Ramonde, who lived with the family in Lewiston. Tante Simone, Tante Annette, Tante Fleurette, they've all passed on by now of old age. Uncle Roger, he died jumping from a train near a lumber farm outside Montreal, they say because of alcohol. My mother takes my hand. She never drank, never worked in the mill. What was her toxin? Who are these people? She asks me. They keep hugging me and asking, how do you do? She's very slim and her hair is dark and dramatic and she's beautiful, so people hug her. They're your cousins. Remember Raymond? You called her Taffy. Taffy, my mother says. The past is right there before her, across a spray of water. Taffy. Moths. You come home from spring break and notice there are a lot of moths upstairs. You left the blinds closed in the bedroom, you think, so maybe that caused this proliferation of moths. Darkness. You open the shades, sleep with them open, which causes insomnia. The next day there are more moths, and the next day more. You think of buying naphthalene, but that must be toxic, you think. So you Google this, or rather you Google moth infestation, and you also Google non-toxic moth repellent. Google tells you where there are moths, there's sure to be larvae. You think on this a few days while killing a moth here and there. Moths linger up in the corner near the ceiling, the next day more moths, and the next day a dozen. Within a week you notice that there are brown streaks across the top third of the wall, streaks of dead moth, a testament to your murder spree. At night, sleeping or trying to sleep with the shades open, you lie awake thinking. You think, if there's larvae, where is it hiding? You check the closet with your clothes, but this is not the epicenter. One night, lying awake, you remember the closet in the other room where you store things, rugs, a few winter coats. It's 5 a.m. and dawn is creeping in with an accusatory glare. It's a few days past the daylight savings change. The brightness of today's 5 a.m. takes you off guard. Spring always suggests there are things to be done. things to be accomplished. You never liked spring, as if its optimism, that sense of opportunity, is something you can never match. Spring is the time of getting accepted to an Ivy League school or getting a job offer from an Ivy League school. You went to a state school, and you teach now at a state school. You feel anxiety about all those letters of recommendation you wrote in the fall. Are your students getting accepted? At your state school, they have strict policies against grade inflation. These poor state school students without the benefit of grade inflation are competing against Harvard kids with their grade inflation for spots in grad school. You think of this while in the back of your mind you try to locate mentally the source of the moth infestation. Your body seems to work ahead of your mind. It tiptoes to the room with the closet. Your finger flicks on the lamp, your eyes darting first to the ceiling, where your out-of-body seeming self notices, lambent in the light, dozens of moth hanging from the ceiling by the silver threads of filament legs. They are like miniature bats, and you wonder if you'll contract a disease from having killed so many of these moths with your bare fingers. This case is real. You can see the moths and feel the chalky pulp of their remains between your thumb and index finger. You open the closet and indeed find, flying in a swirl, dozens of minuscule moths. The closet is warm. A heat pipe runs through it. It's as if a steam is rising off the rugs on the floor, but this is just the whir of moths floating in a haze of what looks like moth euphoria, moth delirium. You flip aside the rim of one rug and witness more moths, swarming, really. This is in fact the most repellent thing you've witnessed. The rug has runic larval patches carved out of its front as if to echo its own oriental pattern. These larval subtractions seem to be telling their own story. They are telling a story. You know the story immediately. The story is this. Your mother died of Alzheimer's a year and a half ago. Plaques and tangles corroded her mind. The Alzheimer's brain really does get smaller. This was her rug. The plaques ate at the fibers of her mind in the same runic patterns as on this rug. Her last words before she died were, "That's nice." You were playing her a fugal Bach concerto on your iPod. "That's nice." She seemed to relax with the music for several seconds, and then she screamed. Then she reposed with the satisfied alien grimace that had become the mask of her final days with the disease. Then she screamed again, but you were used to it. It didn't mean anything. The nurses knew this too. The scream was just an expression, an attempt to connect to the world. She was the mad woman in the attic, your beautiful, once charming mother. That's nice. She still loved Bach. Standing by the closet at dawn, you put on a rain poncho. You hurl the contaminated rug to the curb. You vacuum every corner of the room and put the vacuum bag out with the garbage too. The vacuum has inhaled hundreds of live moths, and they are squirming in the vacuum bag out on the curb. The problem is solved. It's done. But really, its mental residue is not gone. It was your mother's rug, and it always emitted this black sand that stuck to your thighs every time you sat on it. Why did it never go away, that sand, the more you vacuumed and vacuumed? Then you discover on Google that this was actually larval excrement. You hadn't noticed during the month you had the rug in the living room, the little ruts drawn out by the larvae, the patterns like brain ruts going over and over the same old worries. When will my new book get sold? When will I get a better job? When will I prove all my mistakes were for good measure, that I did them on purpose, that there was a trajectory to my life, and even if I wasn't completely in control? There will seem to have been an inevitability in retrospect later, won't there? During the day I see it, that path backwards making sense of my choices. I am a professor, and my students call me Professor Kadetsky. I email my state school kids, and if I wonder about a missed assignment, they email me right back, contrite, and show up in office hours the next day with crocodile faces. I glare at them, water beads in their eyes. I say it's okay, they'll get a B. Life goes on. During the day, everything makes sense. Thank you.